I wanted to talk about the jury instructions. Was made from either side. So what you'll see is I don't think the instruction for defendant is applicable for this phase of the proceeding. Instructions I read phase. So I just need to anybody have anything to say?
As we defer to the defense.
Judge, give me 1 second.
Sure.
8 would be. I'd say it's up to them about the marijuana. Chocolate is. I think that we should do that wrong.
Defense agrees that 6 and 7 can be removed.
How about 8, 9, 8, 9? Is it applicable to this phase of the proceeding?
Defense wants it in, we'll agree. If they want it out, we'll also. I agree with you. It's just a statement. The next several witnesses were deposed. The other issue, Judge, too, is, as you've heard us say, in essence, we're all our aggravating factors.
And I think the instructions say it refers back to other instructions.
It's fine with the state to leave it if
The accomplice informant testimony.
we agree that should be removed.
Defense, along with child.
Yes, we agree.
Okay? I'll even witness if it comes out.
And Judge, maybe just for the record, as far as 8 and 9 go with Wayne, not relevant to anything that's going to be presented today, I can that on the record.
They did not want it in. They were deferring to you.
Oh, you want it out? Oh, I thought you were saying leave it in.
So the inconsistency.
I misunderstood. I thought that they were saying to leave it in. If they said to remove it, we agree.
Okay, leave it out. I'm taking it out.
State agrees.
Is how you're handling his prior misdemeanor. I'm assuming it's a misdemeanor.
Significant history of problems.
Okay.
We don't intend on. And their doctor is going to admit to some previous marijuana use, so they're circumstance with additional evidence. We made an argument though.
Synced. And then the standard instructions that flow from that with the mitigating circumstances. Deliberation. Forms that I previously. This updated copy with counsel.
And list of mitigating.
Okay. You have a list for me?
You want to do that now?
You have a list for me?
And just tell you the ones that are.
So you're just taking some out.
Ones, but I don't know if that just for time's sake. I know that I don't want the jury waiting on us unless you want to wait and do this.
Why don't you know?
Number 10 is repetitive. Number 23.
Your Honor, the jury's reenter in court.
Members of the jury, welcome back. You guys may have a seat, of course. I'm now going to look to the defense for their case. Mr. Davis, Ms. Michelle, you may call your first witness.
Dr. Jennifer Rohrer.
Dr. Rohrer, please. Good morning, good afternoon, doctor. Come on forward to be sworn in by the clerk.
You solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
Good afternoon, doctor. Let's watch your step as you come forward to your right. Need a glass of water, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate you.
Thank you.
That said, Mr. Davis, you may inquire. You're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Would you state your name for the court?
Jennifer Rohrer, R-O-H-R-E-R.
Where are you employed?
I'm self-employed as a clinical and forensic psychologist in the states of Florida and Virginia.
Okay. And can you tell the court what your educational background is, please?
Sure. My highest degree obtained is a PhD in clinical psychology from Kent State University, followed by a pre-doctoral internship in forensic psychology at Florida State Hospital, followed by a postdoctoral residency in forensic psychology at Georgia Regional Hospital in Savannah.
Okay. And after you completed your education, where were you employed after that?
Many places. I started off as a forensic psychologist at South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice, doing post-adjudication evaluations of juveniles. I also worked at Dorothea Dix State Hospital, which is one of the oldest forensic hospitals in the United States, also as a forensic psychologist. Moved to Washington, D.C., where I worked for D.C. Superior Court as a forensic psychologist. Also taught at George Washington University in their forensic psychology program, and also developed and ran a forensic psychology program as department chair at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. During that time, I also assisted with the Alexandria Police Department, teaching police officers how to interact with people with mental illness. I then relocated to Florida in 2016 and have been in private practice since that time.
Okay. And how many times have you testified in court?
About 300.
Okay. And have you also worked on other cases of this nature, capital cases and homicides?
I have, yes.
How many of those?
Maybe between 50 and 75.
And how often do you render an expert opinion?
In court or just for an evaluation?
Any evaluations, how many have you done?
I've conducted over 7,000 evaluations in the course of my career.
And how many opinions have you rendered in court?
Well, about 300 when I've testified.
Judge, I'd offer Dr. Rohrer as an expert in psychology.
There's been no objection, so continue.
Okay? Thank you. All right, ma'am, did you have an occasion to go or occasions to go and meet with Johnathan Quiles?
I did.
Okay? And as going over there and meeting with Mr. Quiles, what is part of your process as far as going through and preparing it and evaluation and psychological eval?
Sure. So I review all the available legal documents with which I'm provided. I met with Mr. Quiles a total of 3 times for about 4 hours at the jail. I collected background information from him in terms of family, educational, employment, mental health, substance use, and criminal history. I also conducted a mental status examination to identify or observe any possible signs of mental illness or intellectual disability or psychiatric impairment. We also did some psychological testing. I administered a brief IQ test and also a personality assessment inventory. And then I wrote up a report after speaking with his aunt.
Okay. Now, in going through this, some of the factors that you take into consideration, I know you said you went over all the police reports and evaluation, or police reports and all of the evidence that was provided to you as best you could. Now, after speaking with his aunt, what were some of the factors that you came to use in doing this?
Are you asking the factors that I felt most relevant in the case?
Yes.
Yes. So based on his self-report and speaking with his aunt, I learned that he had been raised in a high-crime, poverty area of New York, that his mother suffered from mental illness and also, his wife, I apologize, his wife suffered from mental illness and substance abuse. His mother passed away in 2010 from bone cancer. I think that her death was extremely challenging and hard for him. They were very close, and he described himself as a mama's boy. I learned from his aunt, and Mr. Quiles confirmed that his dad was largely absent from his life, and when he was present, he was a negative influence. I believe Mr. Quiles referred to him as a schemester. I believe his dad had a pretty extensive criminal background from what I understand. And then also he reported a history of childhood physical abuse by one of his mother's former boyfriends.
Okay. Did he also self-report drug use?
He did. He told me that he began using marijuana, it was at age 11, and had used alcohol regularly since age 13 or 14. He did suggest that the alcohol abuse was encouraged by his family, that it was normative in his family to be drinking a lot.
Okay. And also, as part of your assessment, can you tell the court when or what his school and education was?
Sure. He withdrew from the 7th grade following the birth of his first child. And that was the highest grade he attained. So he completed the 6th grade.
Okay. And did he become gainfully employed after that?
He did. By all accounts, he's maintained employment and has been successful at all of the jobs that he's been at. Lastly, at the junkyard.
Okay. And did he tell you some of the jobs that he held?
He did. He said not only did he work at the junkyard, but he had previously also worked in construction, maintenance, and as a truck driver.
And as part of your assessment, you said you did an IQ test. What were the results of that?
He obtained a full-scale IQ of 90, which falls in the average range.
Okay. And despite not having completed any school?
That's correct.
All right. Well, I shouldn't say any school, but moderate school. He didn't get through the high school.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in addition to that, as part of your assessment and going over to the jail, what were some of the things that struck you as significant in meeting with him and going over his records?
Each time I went to the jail and signed in, I spoke with the officers, both in public reception, which is the entrance to the jail, and also up on the floor, on the 5th floor where he's been housed each time I've seen him. Every time I've gone there, numerous officers have told me he's been a model inmate, which is very surprising. They actually assigned him to be an alternate trustee, which again is highly unusual given the nature of his charges at the time. Even during lockdown, when the other inmates were locked in their cells and weren't allowed to come out, Mr. Quiles was given the opportunity to even clean the jail, even in the restricted areas where there were no cameras. To my knowledge, he never abused that privilege, and that suggests some level of trust by the correction officers that they could trust him to be around the jail, around phones, around possible contraband. And to my knowledge, he never took advantage of that because, to my knowledge, he has no disciplinary records, DRs. I also learned that he often read the Bible to those inmates who could not read, and that he helped care for some of the more vulnerable inmates at the jail.
Okay, and as far as when you say more of the vulnerable, can you expand on that as far as what you mean?
I was told that he had assisted some of the elderly inmates and also just less vulnerable, those that probably could not protect themselves from the more aggressive inmates in the jail.
Okay. Now, in your years of doing this, is that pretty, I mean, I know you use the word rare, but I mean, in your years, have you ever seen someone with a charge of this nature working as a trustee?
I have not. I was very shocked when he told me, and I did verify it because I was so surprised by that fact.
Okay. And how many years of that, of you doing this, have you been, or how many years have you been doing this?
Since 2005.
Okay. So 18 years?
About, yes.
Now, besides that, in speaking with his family, what were some of the other notable things that stood out as far as Mr. Quiles?
I spoke with his aunt. She described him as extremely generous with his time and assistance, always willing to help others. She described him as a very good father, a very hard worker, said that he would do anything to help anyone in the past and would continue to do so. She also noted that she felt, in her opinion, that a lot of his problems early on were due to the absence of his father. She indicated that they had reconciled somewhat prior to his arrest in this case, but she did feel that that was an absence in his life, that his father was not present.
Okay. Now, as part of your assessment, what is your overall thoughts of how he could be productive as an inmate if it were considered to be life?
I think he has shown over the past 5 years in the Duval County Jail that he hasn't violated the trust that the correction officers have given him as an alternate trustee. He's had no disciplinary action or reports. He has helped other inmates, particularly the elderly and the vulnerable. I feel as if in a structured environment, he could be as productive as one can be in a prison setting.
Okay, so as you stated, in a structured environment, so in a setting such as that of at the state prison, then he could be a productive member as an inmate.
Yes.
And be able to assist others.
I do believe that, yes.
Okay. And to be clear, life is that. He has no opportunity of parole or anything else, correct?
Correct.
All right. And is there anything else that, in your review of his records and everything that you've gone through, that you feel would be notable for this court to consider and for this jury?
I don't think so. I think we've touched on everything that was part of my evaluation.
All right. Judge, if I may have a second with counsel. Just briefly, ma'am, in going over your assessment, you did what's called a PAI, a personality assessment inventory.
That's correct.
What is that for the court?
It's a personality test. It's probably the second most widely used personality test in the entire world. It assesses both personality characteristics, but also any type of psychopathology, so any types of mental health concerns ranging from depression to schizophrenia to insomnia to anxiety to substance use disorders. And then it also looks at those personality traits and how one interacts with the world and the people around them. And
as part of your assessment, what are your findings?
Based on the testing results, his testing results were valid, meaning he was genuine and honest in responding to the questions. His results did suggest a personality style or personality characteristics consistent with an antisocial attitude or tendency.
Which means what, if you don't mind, in layman's terms?
Sure. So his results are consistent with an antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder is a condition in which one's personality characteristics or traits are often maladaptive or unhealthy and impair functioning in a certain way. In this particular personality disorder, the antisocial, it's typically violating the rights of others. It could include criminal behavior, but it doesn't always need to be criminal behavior. It could be manipulation. There could be some arrogance, some entitlement, deceitfulness, if I didn't say that already. But we often think about it going along with criminal behavior.
Okay. And for lack of better words, narcissism?
Yes, narcissism.
Okay. Anything else?
The testing revealed conflictual interpersonal relationships, a lot of problems with interpersonal relationships based on the testing.
When you say that, can you give an example, please?
Sure. Again, this is based on testing, but based on the testing, which again was valid, it suggested that a lot of his relationships have a lot of conflict. He may be impulsive, egocentric, angry, may lash out at others in the context of those interpersonal relationships, may be very impulsive when he lashes out, feeling that he has been slighted in some way.
Okay. And as a result of that, most of his relationships don't last a long period of time. Would that be accurate?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
Do most of his relationships only last for a short period of time? Or conflict in the relationships?
I mean, based on the testing, his relationships, whether they're short or long, tend to be characterized by high conflict.
All right. Nothing else, Your Honor.
Please, court.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Just a few follow-up questions for you. Ma'am, now you saw the defendant on 3 occasions. Is that what you testified to?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am. And doctor, did you see him on June 28, 2023?
Correct.
June 29, 2023,
Correct.
and July 21, 2023.
Correct.
So you first saw him approximately 90 days ago. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you'd never seen him prior to June 28, 2023?
No, I have not.
Hadn't talked to any correctional officers about him all the way back to 2019, 2020, 2021, or 2022?
No, never.
The only ones you talked to were during the 90 days or so that you met him.
Yes, when I went in to check in and see Mr. Quiles.
Okay. And in fact, you authored your report on August 23rd, 2023, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And if your last visit was July 21 of 2023, that means you really only were at the jail talking to correctional officers between June 28 and July 21 of 2023, correct?
Yes.
So about 30 days of a sample size is your testimony with respect to who you talked to over there?
Well, those are the times I spoke with the officers.
Sure. You looked at records as well.
I'm sorry?
You looked at records as well, correct?
I did, yes.
Okay. Now, your 3 visits also included a total of about 4 hours you sat down with him.
That's correct.
Did you listen to the 2-hour wire that the jury heard where he was corresponding with 2 other inmates?
Unfortunately, no.
You never heard any of that?
I did not.
Now, you told us you interviewed one other family member, and that was an aunt. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
You didn't talk to any other family members?
No, he asked me to speak to his aunt.
All right, that's where I was going next. Did he only ask you to speak to his aunt?
Yes.
Now, ma'am, you also kind of went over some of the testing that you did. Did he tell you as part of your testing or in your interview process that he had 5 different children?
Yes, he did.
All right. And did he say that those marriages failed due to his infidelity?
He said the first one failed due to infidelity on his part.
All right. And he also told you he left school after the 7th grade during his 7th grade year, correct?
Withdrew from the 7th, correct.
All right. And he did that because he had his first child?
That's what he said, yes.
Now, you agree you did not diagnose him with any kind of mental illness? Do you agree with that?
So technically personality disorders are classified as mental illnesses according to the American Psychological Association, but they are distinct from mental illnesses that we think of like a bipolar disorder or a schizophrenia or a depression.
Okay.
They're different. They're qualitatively different.
Isn't antisocial personality disorder basically characterized by disregard of other people?
Yes.
That was your diagnosis of him.
I actually diagnosed him with a mixed or an unspecified personality disorder because I saw features of both antisocial and narcissistic personality disorder. So the two of them combined.
Now, but you also saw no history either in records or in your interviews with him of any kind of depression?
No.
Suicidal etiology?
No.
And did you inquire of him about whether he entered a substance abuse program at age 15?
I did.
What did he say about that?
He told me that he voluntarily admitted himself to a 2-year substance abuse treatment program at age 15 to get away from his family, his neighborhood, just to get away.
All right. Now, doctor, do you agree the defendant is fully oriented?
Yes, absolutely.
You agree he's friendly,
Yes.
engaging?
Yes,
He has the thought processes that are coherent and relevant?
he does.
He's not distracted by any kind of internal stimuli?
Correct.
He's not delusional, correct?
He is not.
You believe he has adequate with respect to attention and concentration issues?
Yes.
He has no memory issues, correct?
Correct.
No intellectual disabilities of any kind?
No.
In fact, you've described him as being average, correct? With
Yes.
respect to his testing.
Yes.
Now, you chose in your testing to give this PAI, that's a personality assessment test?
It is.
All right. Is that where you glean the personalities that you described at the end of your direct examination?
Are you referring to the diagnoses?
Yes, ma'am.
The diagnoses are based in part on testing, but also on one's history and also current presentation.
Well, one of those you said was, quote, conflictual interpersonal relationships, end quote.
Yes.
That's how you described them.
Well, yes, that was based on the testing.
Okay. And what does that mean?
Conflictual relationships?
Yes, ma'am.
One having trouble in interpersonal relationships. It could mean a variety of things. The testing, and I did mention this briefly a couple minutes ago, according to psychological testing, his conflictual relationships are because, in my opinion, because of his maladaptive personality traits of being hostile and impulsive and egocentric, entitled.
So that includes interpersonal relationships with significant others.
Sure.
Not just immediate family members like his father or his mother.
Yes.
Any relationship.
I would say most, if not all. Yes.
All right. And I think if I heard you correctly, you described him as impulsive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Self-centered?
Yes.
Hostile?
Can be. Yes.
And also I think you testified that he lashes out impulsively against one who slights him. Is that correct?
Based on testing, yes.
You described him as egocentric.
Yes.
Hostile?
Can be.
I think you said angry as well.
I did.
Now, does the testing show you that he externalizes blame? And if so, will you explain that?
I don't know if that was specific in the testing, but that kind of falls under antisocial personality disorder. Typically those with that personality disorder and the other personality disorder, narcissism, they tend to externalize blame, project blame. It's someone else's fault.
All right. Now, that was my next question. That's somebody who describes situations as not his own fault, not of his own doing.
Correct.
And that's how you describe the defendant.
He does externalize blame, yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Just briefly, Dr. Rohrer, now, despite those issues that you just went over with the state, as well as with myself earlier, Johnathan Quiles can be a productive member as an inmate if you were to be considered for life, correct?
I believe so. I believe he has shown that by what I've learned about his behavior at the jail, and again, no disciplinary action. Now, whether his behavior in the jail is altruistic, meaning he truly wants to help others, or whether he's satisfying his own narcissism, I don't think that matters. I do think he's demonstrated for 5 years in the Duval County Jail that he can go without getting into trouble, breaking their trust, breaking the law, getting new charges. So yes, I do think he can conform his behavior despite what motivation that might be.
Okay, and to be clear, have you ever seen someone with these type of charges be a trustee?
I have not, no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Doctor, good to see you, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The rest of your day.
You too.
Mr. Davis, Ms. Michelle.